Healthy Rebel Radio is sponsored by the Healthy Rebel app. 300 plus secretly healthy, delicious, mouth-watering dessert and treat recipes made with all-natural, whole food ingredients. Now available for download on the App Store and Google Play. Find out more details at healthyrebel.com.
Welcome to Healthy Rebel Radio. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer. I'm here with my Dami Health Healthy Rebel co-founder, Amy Lane. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's talk again about happiness. We've covered this in one show so far, but I really believe it's something you cultivate on your own. I feel like it's not of the general population's belief that happiness is something you work on. So I come from the stance of it doesn't just happen. You have to do things to actually cultivate happiness. Mm-hmm. And you would agree with that?
Yes. Cultivate, maintain, and accentuate.
It's an active process. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And there are people that are naturally, dispositioned to kind of look on the sunnier side of things, perhaps. And there are people that are dispositioned on the other side of things. But I think that everybody is capable of cultivating happiness and peace and joy in their lives. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And someone who also agrees with this is someone who posted today in the Psychology Today, which is a magazine, but they also have an active blog where PhDs and other people can write articles for. Someone named Robert Puff has written an article called Advanced Happiness Skill, with an outline surrounding 3 points that you can use to cultivate more happiness. And I want to go through them and see what you think.
Sounds good.
The first point is becoming passive. So taking a passive stance to things leads to more happiness.
Someone would say that's not intelligent. That's where
explain that. What do you mean?
That's where the whole theory of ignorance is bliss.
Yes.
Comes from.
And yeah, that's the first thing I thought of too. And he tries to explain what he means by this, and states that he recognizes that this is most likely going to be perceived this way. But a good example... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I can think of a good example myself.
Yeah, go for it.
I just thought about myself. So one of my biggest things that I had to work on is if it's fight or flight, naturally I'm a fight person.
Yes.
Due to my circumstances that happened throughout my childhood and my early teens, I discovered the best way to survive was to quickly defend and attack. Mm-hmm. That just happened. Things happen, and it worked at those times. It worked for me.
Yes.
Now, that also causes a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. You can't go through life. Someone attacks you, and you just automatically attack back. That's how I was kind of functioning. So even if I was in a situation where I have a really strong barometer for the truth. Mm-hmm. That's something that I love about myself, and also sometimes don't like about myself because it's almost a tick. Like, I can't let it go.
Right.
And if I'm in a situation where I know that, someone's lying to me or to themselves, or, cloaking a situation, I can't help but
yeah, for sure. It's a reaction.
I can't. It's a fire in my stomach. It's just I can't let it go. So that's something I really had to work on, is softening and being more gentle. It's not about altering your personality.
Right, and it's not about altering your personality, no. And it's about recognizing that these things are situational.
And you don't have to bark at every other dog.
That's exactly it.
That's the other thing. I used to answer back to every piece of hate that I got on the internet. Mm-hmm. And it would always be an intelligent rebuttal that I would feel good getting out,
for sure.
Or, if I disagreed with someone, or I felt someone was lying, or, in friendships, if someone betrayed me, like, I had to address it. I had to make it very clear as to what went on and how I felt about it. And, I got to a point where it was taking energy away from other things in my life. It was mental.
Definitely. It wasn't necessarily cultivating happiness for you.
It wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And, my job in life isn't to go around and police anybody.
No.
And I realized that sometimes you don't have to say it all. If a friendship comes to a close, someone betrays you, if that person wants to know what happened and if they want to talk about it and how you feel about it, then let them, come to you. But if not, it's not my place to educate everybody.
No,
it's a very selfish, weird. Anyway,
it is. Well, what we're talking about here is ego meeting ego.
Right.
And in certain circumstances, we use that to, defend our own pride.
And a lot of those things, like I said, like a lot of these they turn into a negative thing in our lives. We cultivate them from a reason of, survival or protection. Mm-hmm. They do serve a purpose at times. Yep. That's why when I see an adolescent child that's extremely defensive or, snaps back really quickly, or you can't say anything to them, and then I get it.
Oh, it's a normal process.
And I get what's going on behind the scenes there.
Definitely.
They feel like they have to protect themselves. They've obviously been through some things. Yeah,
well, and what we're talking about here is that ego, that part of you that is meant to be there to keep you safe.
Right.
And oftentimes the consciousness, or the subconscious, I guess this would be called, thinks it knows best. Mm-hmm. And what he explains in the article, and I would agree with this, is that the ego often escalates things beyond where they need to go.
100%. I can say that with full
definitely
confidence about myself. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I purposely changed this about myself. And it's not that I changed the essence of who I am. I still have a strong barometer for truth. But I'm definitely much more gentle. And I'm definitely, it's not like it's along the lines of pick your battles. Mm-hmm. There's things that you should but the other thing is I've learned to sleep on things, which is revolutionary.
Oh, that's really helpful. Yeah.
I won't respond back right away. I will go to sleep, think about it. A lot of the times I'll write a rough draft of get it out.
Yeah.
I'll save it. I'll go to sleep and then I'll read it the next day. Sometimes the next day I wake up and I laugh and think, oh, this girl was tripping yesterday.
I was really in a place, yeah.
And, sometimes I don't need to, sometimes I do need to address things. And that's, especially being a woman in business.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
You have to be strong and you have to answer back, and you can't apologize for being a strong female. It has to be done. Mm-hmm. But, you can, and I'm happier.
Yeah.
Because I don't get caught up in the emotions of everyday things. People cannot piss me off like they used to.
No. And that's the thing, isn't it? That rabbit hole.
So I'm happier because they just can't take me down with them. Most of the time now I find things funny that I used to get really upset about.
There's a state change. And I love how Tony Robbins talks about state changes. Because when you start to find things funny, like when you realize that in certain circumstances the ego is not serving you, it can become funny. Mm-hmm. If you accept that into your life, which you have at this point, and being able to laugh at something completely changes the physiology of the body. It changes what hormones are released. It doesn't allow you to think negatively when you're finding something funny.
And I think when you realize, when dealing with people and circumstances and getting caught up in other people's emotions, when you sincerely realize that everyone is just living out their own projections, and what goes on with other people and how they treat you and the things they've said to you and the things that, has very little to do with you. Mm-hmm. If you visualize someone wearing glasses with pink lenses and then they tell you that the building across the street is pink, that is true for them. Now, you may look at the building, you don't have the glasses on, and the building's gray, and you're like, what in the heck? That's life in a nutshell.
It really is.
Everybody's coming from their own life experiences, their own perceptions. So, I mean, if you're dealing with someone that sees beauty in everything, that's really a good indication of who they are as a person. If you're dealing with someone that, puts down women and gossips a lot, and that's an indication that person's hanging on to a lot of self-hate and resentment.
Right.
So I come now from more of a place of compassion, because I realize, most people aren't talking to you or about you, even when they're using you in their storyline.
They're relaying this stream of consciousness based on what their experiences have, where their experiences have brought them.
Right, and you're kind of just the person they put in that place to use it in their storyline. So it really releases you. Mm-hmm, sorry, I think I totally got you off track of these.
Oh my gosh, no. I think this first point is the most important. Mm-hmm. And one of the basic examples of this that everyone can relate to is road rage. How the ego can escalate this to a dangerous position when it's not necessary. If someone cuts you off or honks at you or causes you to feel, a sense of anger while you're driving, then oftentimes that anger can take you to a place where you can make the situation dangerous.
100%.
And it's just not worth it. So it's an easy place where you can practice this step one.
And if you can pull yourself out far enough to look back at it, it makes no sense.
Totally.
It makes no sense, which makes it funny. Because what are we doing all taking ourselves so seriously? Like, calm down.
For sure.
You know?
For sure. And that's actually step two. Step two is detaching yourself from a situation.
Well, that's exactly what I described.
Exactly.
Huh.
You're on the advanced happiness skill plan. See, it is...
I didn't even know it.
It's naturally inherent when you start to practice happiness, right? When you start to practice things with like self-love and compassion for others. These things start to happen in your life anyhow. Step two is detaching yourself.
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about not buying into people's storylines, not buying into... there's always good feedback. And if something really bothers you, that's a good indication that there's some truth to it. It doesn't mean that, you say someone calls you a name and it triggers you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you are that name, but it means that maybe you have some unresolved issues around that.
Right.
I once read something that no one can attack you and you feel it unless they're picking up on something that you're not either dealt with
That's
fully.
the only way you would feel it.
Right.
Right.
Maybe something you haven't... Like, when I was younger and I had gone through horrible things as a child, and the community had a real misperception, unfortunately, as to what went on with me as a child. And I was labeled a bad girl.
Right.
I was just a bad girl, which now as an adult woman, the insanity of that statement, like it makes me want to go back and just clunk heads together, really, it does.
For sure.
Because there's no such thing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like a
There is
child
no
would
such
choose to self-destruct just out of nowhere.
Right.
It's quite obvious that there's some major issues going on that aren't being dealt with, and children don't have the tools to deal with them. So apparently I didn't have the proper support systems. So anyway, I have real rage around that. But anyway... Haven't dealt with that one.
There, we're working on one. We're working on that one. Okay.
But when it's coming out of that, going on, 15, 16, 17, moving on in my life, people would still call me a bad girl. I remember there was a doctor in town, and he'd come into where I worked at this little store, and he would say, "Oh, the bad girl." And my heart rate would go up, and my breathing would change, and my face would get red. And I remember I was working with a guy, and he was my good friend, and he was like, "Why did that make you so upset?"
Right.
But he was picking up on that. Now, if today someone walked up to me and said, "Oh, the bad girl," you can't, there's nothing. Because I feel bad for you that's your perception of what happened to this sweet child.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's about, but he was picking up on that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, too, I don't think anyone would walk up to me really and say that now. Because I'm not carrying the shame.
Yeah, there it is.
Right? Because I was carrying so much shame and so much confusion because, I never got to really work it out. I never had the proper help with the situation and the traumas that I went through. So, yeah, like, now you wouldn't pick up the shame. And if someone did just to try to test me... Yeah. There's nothing.
No,
there's nothing. I have no shame.
It wouldn't raise your cortisol.
No, I mean, I own everything about my life, and I've dealt with it, and I understand it. So I think that's something to think about as well. If something triggers you, there's something there. And it doesn't mean you are that thing, but maybe you haven't dealt with that.
Yes.
And for me, I hadn't dealt with the shame.
Right.
As to what happened.
And in acute situations, detaching yourself from it can be extremely helpful for your sanity. Oh. Right? You're separating yourself from that situation, whether it's bothering you or not. Okay, let's step aside. Let's get out of this experience so that my past experience don't guide.
You become grounded. So you become like a giant oak tree in the wind.
It's a great metaphor for this. Yeah.
People cannot shake you. Right. The circumstances around you, may they be bad, may they be horrible, may be a hard day, maybe something really terrible does happen. But you're still connected to that part of you where you are perfect, you are firm, you know who you are, and no one can shake or take that from you.
Gosh, did you read this article?
No, this is what I've done with my life,
right,
so I could write the article.
There you go. Because his example for this step 2 detachment would be an emergency situation. Something terrible is happening, like you said. You come upon a car accident. If you go with your negativity, if you go with your panic, if you go with your freak out mode, you're not going to help these victims. You're not going to be able to do anything in that moment. And that's a larger metaphor for obviously handling your business in life.
100%.
But if you detach yourself from the situation and just go about it, helping people one by one without that emotional tailspin, you can actually get some positive things done. Physicians deal with this every day. This is one of the. It's key to having this.
It's something I really used with altering this about myself. Is I would use certain phrases to remember. So I would say to myself, for myself, like I would say, like, you are a powerful queen. You own the room. You don't pick up on the vibes. You set the vibe. Right? You don't get carried with the tides. You are the ocean.
Yes.
Right? I would say those types of things to myself to really change and remember and get grounded in. And another thing that I remember, or that I've used, and I've always used it, but now obviously I live it. I used to say it to myself, but I wasn't doing it. The concept of being a gentleman. And I know this is going to sound strange, but I'm very into taking all things from different sexes. And one thing I really like about the concept of being a gentleman, and I like to embody, is I think of the gentleman as if there's a terrible situation happening. Or you could use like the father figure you had or you always wanted.
Sure.
That's the person everyone turns to, and they're safe. Yes. They make you feel safe. Everything's going to be okay.
Definitely.
They're the person that they're steady.
Yeah.
And I always try to embody that because I think it makes other people feel safe. And I loved that feeling. Feeling safe is just, it's an intangible thing that is just such a gift if you have someone that you could turn to and be like,
Definitely.
Right? So I always kind of remind myself of like being the gentleman.
Yeah, you can be the gentleman.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you can be the gentleman in the room or the father, whatever works for you. You can be that for people. And what a gift is that? If someone can look to you and be like, she's always steady. I always feel safe when something bad happens, and if I turn to her, or if she's in the room, she always makes it good.
Yeah.
She makes it calm. She brings us back to common sense, and then we can make good choices. Or I think that's a really powerful thing to remember, and you can use it as, being a powerful woman, or if you can relate to that, the male aspect of that, you can embody it yourself. But I use that all the time.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Making people feel safe.
It's key.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, it changes your physical atmosphere. We were talking about mental atmosphere a lot.
This can heal other people.
Yeah, I would
in
agree
feeling
with that.
safe.
I try and practice that every day.
You do it. You've done it for me. So, and you do it for everybody. I can tell. And it's about owning the space and not getting caught up in the vibe. You set the vibe. And then everyone meets your vibe.
Yeah.
You can either walk into a room and you can pick up the energy of the room, or you can bring the energy. How friggin' cool is that? And that's a fact.
True.
You can do that. You can do it today. And the more you breathe into it, and the more you use it and work it, the better you get, the stronger it gets, the more natural it is, the happier you are.
Definitely. And you know that I take great pride in it too. For sure. So step 3 is exactly along the same lines as what you've outlined so far with the first two steps. You've sort of brought it full circle already because it is so inherent. Because step 3 is to observe yourself. Like what you've said about when you detach yourself or when you remain passive, you're then looking at what is happening here. Where am I going with this? Why am I reacting like this? Why are they reacting like this? Like you said, that was the whole point of this is their story. And that keeps you safe.
And it doesn't mean that you don't hold your own accountability. It
no,
doesn't
because
mean that
you have to self-assess as well.
Yeah, you can't just go out and act however you wish and then just be like, well, they're just responding in their own ego. Like, it's not you always own your side of the street. You own your story. You own your energy. You own what you bring to other situations. I think being self-aware is so important, and self-reflecting. How could I have made this situation better? What did I do, or what am I carrying that did bring this up from my life? What is my lesson in it? And lessening your grip on the person.
Yeah.
And dealing more with the situation. So important. One of my biggest pet peeves in life is when someone declares they have anxiety, and then they use that as just the excuse to treat people poorly or make other people uncomfortable or make circumstances uncomfortable or to just be mean in life.
It's no excuse.
Getting a, something like a diagnosis or self-diagnosis of being, say, anxious, that is a barometer of, okay, this is what's going on with me. Now I understand it, so I can stop, manically trying to figure out what the heck's going on and being afraid. I know what it is now. Now I fix it.
Yes.
And you do the things on a daily basis to make it better for yourself and for everyone else. But I have little to no patience when people use one of those diagnoses to be mean and horrible to other people.
Definitely.
It's not a diagnosis for an excuse. It's not a license to be a shitty person. No. It isn't.
No, if anything, it's a license to continually self-reflect. Maybe you are separating yourself from situations more, which can have an effect on others, definitely.
Maybe you're not perceiving how uncomfortable you're making other people. And maybe just being honest about that.
Yeah. For sure, that's something you can communicate.
100%.
Yeah.
We all have natural resting systems that are kind of either good or bad, and that's why we work on them, and we breathe into certain things, and we lessen the grip on certain things, and we work on it. None of this is a license to be horrible to other people.
No, definitely not.
While you're working on yourself,
that's a very good point.
Yeah, while you're working on yourself, you always have to be decent to other people.
Well, and this brings us to this point of observing yourself, and even if you are in this, generalized anxiety disorder, or you do experience panic attacks or something like this, being able to self-reflect can easily, well, not easily, but it can help you get to a place of compassion for yourself. Compassion for others, feeling the feelings of empathy, and practicing getting into the mode of forgiveness quicker. I do believe this third step, even if you are in that most extreme place of negativity, which would be generalized anxiety disorder, this step can help you reach, if you then focus on these three things: forgiveness, compassion, empathy, you can get there a little easier. And
I think that the loop of self-reflection sometimes can be detrimental. So it's about self-reflecting, but then also reflecting empathetically as to other people in the circumstance or that you deal with on a daily basis, maybe feeling during this circumstance. Exactly. Focusing on other people really helps you take away the seriousness of your own stuff.
Oh, does it ever?
Right?
Does it ever?
It really helps. I know that we've dealt with that in our relationship. There's been some times where, we've both been through really heavy, stressful times, and I think something that often has taken us out of feeling sorry for ourselves is seeing how it was affecting the other person. And then that's a motivation to help and change.
Which then that contributes to your happiness personally.
100%.
That's a proven concept.
100%.
Contributing to others benefits your own happiness.
Completely.
For sure.
And another thing to remember is, a lot of people, especially busy moms, and I get it, man, it's like having a million jobs, full-time jobs. I bow down to mothers. Yeah. They'll say things like, I don't have time. And it's like, well, do you have time to be miserable? Because that's a choice. It's either you work on being happy or you become miserable.
Yes.
Do you have time to have failed relationships? Do you have time to never meet any goals and never feel confident? Do you have time to possibly become sick?
Right, because these are the consequences.
It's reality. And, we've somehow been raised without being told that our brain needs to be exercised in all areas. We need to grow and continually. You don't get to a place and then you stop.
No.
It's forever.
Yeah, it is.
And it gets better and easier. The first is always the hardest.
Yes.
It's that thing, it's the bottom of the mountain, you're really winded, you're out of shape, you gotta go up it. It's the same thing about cultivating happiness, getting out of negative mindsets. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. No, you got it, absolutely. But the point is, we can cultivate happiness. These are some of the steps that we've actually, found useful for us as well.
100%. Two things I want to just say.
Please add,
before we... a couple ways to be happier today is stop reading news first thing in the morning or watching news first thing in the morning, or right before you go to bed, just cut those things out. It's okay. The world will still go on. You will get informed. News you need to know will come to you. And 2, stop buying and participating in gossip.
Yes. Love it.
Being hateful to other people, and I'm really strong about this, about us as women, as a community, we need to, no matter if you agree with somebody or not agree with somebody, you can voice opinions, but being maliciously gossip or just, nonsense like that, and I'm talking about even these gossip magazines, it's all feeding into a really unhealthy mental atmosphere, and if you stop participating in it, I guarantee you will be happier.
Agreed. That's Healthy Rebel Radio, episode 28. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
See you.
Healthy Rebel Radio is presented by the online health and wellness center, DamieHealth.com. Since 2009, Amy Lane has successfully coached thousands of women through her signature program, the Bikini Body Program. Join today to work exclusively with Amy to unveil your greatest yet to be from the inside out. Go to DamieHealth.com for more information.
Thank you for listening to Healthy Rebel Radio. Please connect with us on our community pages on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram, all at the handle @DamieHealth. For weekly recipes, articles, and all our episodes straight to your inbox, join our newsletter at DamieHealth.com. You can find all the links discussed in today's episode in the show notes. Thank you for joining us, and see you tomorrow.